Vicarious liability is a form of secondary liability where one party is held legally responsible for the torts committed by another. The nature of vicarious liability is strict liability, meaning fault does not need to be proven against the defendant who is held liable. The purpose of vicarious liability is to ensure victims are compensated, to spread risk fairly, and to encourage responsible organization and supervision. The elements of vicarious liability are a qualifying relationship between the parties and a tort committed in the course of that relationship. The first element is the existence of a qualifying relationship, meaning the tortfeasor must be an employee or in a relationship akin to employment, as shown in Catholic Child Welfare Society v. Various Claimants. The second element is that the tort must be committed in the course of employment, meaning there is a sufficient connection between the wrongdoing and the work, as shown in Lister v. Hesley Hall Limited. There are many tests for vicarious liability to determine whether the tortfeasor is an employee and was acting in the course of their employment. The traditional tests to determine whether the tortfeasor is an employee are the control test, the organization test, and the multiple or economic reality test. The control test examines whether the employer has the right to control how the work is done, with Ewens v. Noakes showing that extensive control suggests employment. The organization test considers whether the worker is integrated into the employer's business rather than merely an accessory, as shown in Stevenson, Jordan and Harrison Limited v. McDonald and Evans. The multiple or economic reality test looks at several factors including control, mutuality of obligation, and financial risk, with Ready Mixed Concrete Limited v. Minister of Pensions demonstrating its application. Akin to employment means a relationship that is not a formal contract of employment but is sufficiently similar to justify imposing vicarious liability. The akin to employment tests are whether the work is integral to the business, whether the activity creates risk, whether the tortfeasor is under the control of the defendant, and whether the defendant benefits from the activity. The first test is whether the activity is an integral part of the defendant's business, as shown in Cox v. Ministry of Justice where prisoners work furthered prison operations. The second test is whether the defendant created the risk by assigning the activity, demonstrated in Catholic Child Welfare Society v. Various Claimants. The third test is whether the tortfeasor is under the control of the defendant even if limited, as shown in Cox v. Ministry of Justice. The fourth test is whether the defendant is more able to compensate the victim, reinforcing liability as seen in Various Claimants v. Barclays Bank plc. The tests to determine whether the tort was committed in the course of employment are the Salmon test and the close connection test. The Salmon test is a test to determine whether a tort was committed in the course of employment by asking whether it was authorized or a wrongful mode of doing an authorized act. The elements of the Salmon test are an authorized act and an unauthorized mode of carrying out an authorized act. An authorized act occurs where the employee does exactly what they are employed to do, even if it causes harm, as shown in Century Insurance v. Northern Ireland Transport Board. An unauthorized mode occurs where the employee performs an authorized task in a wrongful way, as demonstrated in Limpus v. London General Omnibus Company. The close connection test asks whether the tort is so closely connected to employment that it is fair and just to impose liability, as shown in Lister v. Hesley Hall Limited. The liability for torts closely connected to employment is imposed where the employee's position significantly increased the risk of the tort occurring, as illustrated in Muhammad v. W. M. Morrison Supermarkets plc. The new approaches when dealing with tortfeasors who do not fit the classic employer-employee relationship focus on risk creation, fairness, and business integration, allowing liability to be imposed in relationships akin to employment as developed in cases such as Cox v. Ministry of Justice and Various Claimants v. Barclays Bank plc. Thank you for watching this video on vicarious liability. I'll see you in the next one.